When the Kano Emirates crisis just started, for many people, it was nothing more than a storm in a teacup. But fast forward just a few weeks down the line, it has become an issue with several elements: political, social, security, and otherwise. As of today, it has so evolved that we have, quote unquote, two emirs in Kano, which in itself is an aberration. But then, as I say, there is no smoke without fire. There have been several developments that have led to where we are today regarding this instant issue. We have seen multiple, in some cases, conflicting court orders in this regard. And as such, you have the 15th emir, whom some would have thought by now had been removed and replaced by Muhammadu Sanusi II. But that hasn't been the case, because as it stands today, while Muhammadu Sanusi II, who ordinarily, all else equal, should have been the 16th emir, is in Kano and in the palace, the other emir, the 15th emir, talking about Ado Bayero, is in the Nasarawa mini palace. And as it stands, we understand that security guards, police presence is at both palaces, keeping watch. So question is, as it stands today, who is, in the eye of the law, the emir of Kano, and how do we make sense of all of these court orders coming through regarding this case? We're going to find out with my guests right after this short break. I'm Mofebe. Welcome to Scale of Justice. We're back shortly. This is Global Television. Just to let you know that Scale of Justice takes a 360-degree look at legal matters without biases, emotions, and sentiments. My guest on the program today is Ziggy Usman, is a legal practitioner as well as a legal analyst. It's a delight, Barrister Usman, to have you on the program today.
Good day, viewers. I'm happy to be here.
So let's begin with what has now become a legal tussle in Kano State. I'm not sure not many persons would have thought this matter will end up in court. But now that it has, the concern has become the conflicting orders that we have seen emanate from different courts in Kano State. And then in the middle of that, we have seen the interference of politics in this matter. How do we sieve through and understand what the legal implications are?
Okay. First thing first, in issue of emirship tussle, going by the provision of the law, there are some stipulations and provisions stated from the Constitution. And for everything that will happen in this country, the root goes to the Constitution, because that is where we have the rights and powers to do what we are doing, starting from the courts and individuals as well. Now, coming to look at it in this perspective, there are like two courts in this matter, emanating from Federal High Court and the State High Court. And basically, this is something that under normal circumstances, I think even 400 level students in the university, when asked this question, because they must have studied constitutional law and then part of civil procedure, he will know exactly, if he's being asked this kind of question, when these issues like this come up, who will be the right court to entertain and hear such matters.
In terms of jurisdiction?
In terms of jurisdiction, because that's where it starts. That's the power. Because you must have a power before you do something. That's why I started by saying that the Constitution happens to be the ground norm of this of our country, and every body, part, either institution, derive its own power from that constitution. Now, going back by the jurisdiction issue, you find out that, like I said, a 400 level student will outrightly tell you that in issues like this, the state high court are the ones empowered by the constitution to entertain and handle matters that has to do with chieftaincy affairs, not the federal high court. And in the same constitution, section 251 clearly states out all the powers and jurisdictions of the federal high court, what they can do and why they should do them. Now, going back to now hold on to handling or taking matters like this, it's a little bit confusing because it doesn't give a direction to even the students of law coming up for them to have a perspective, a direction, because it's confusing because they will not understand what it takes to get to that level, paraventure. But for some of us that we've been in the system, we know what it takes and how things are done. It's the best way to go about this matter. And like you mentioned, that because of the politics involved, that is where the issue of the Federal High Court comes in. Because of the politics that is involved. Because if not because of politics, I don't see the reason why the Federal High Court will go ahead and entertain such matter. The best they would have done was to just decline jurisdiction over the matter, because it's obvious. Before now, there are 2 Supreme Court judgments that clearly states that Federal High Court has no business and power entertaining any chieftaincy affairs. We have Tukur versus Gongola government of Gongola State, and then Adeni and Aderi Ogun, 2 Supreme Court judgments. And in one of them, Cardi B. White, I think, they were one of the panel of judges then, and they stipulated it clear, stating that in one of the court that there is no way a enforcement of fundamental human rights will emanate from chieftaincy affair. Why? Because to be a chief is not a fundamental human right. The fact that somebody was not a king is said to be a king today, and now they said no, you are no longer a king, and he will now run and say no, my fundamental human right has been
infringed upon.
It's not under the chapter 4 of the Constitution that guarantees right of citizens. If that will be the case, probably everybody in Nigeria will have been a king in one way or the other. Because if it's a right that you can go and challenge using the enforcement of fundamental human rights, everybody can be a king. But that is not there. So where do they get it from? And then that was exactly what the court said then. And you know, in law, we go by precedents. And the precedent goes from the Supreme Court to the lower courts, the least court. And section 287 make it clear in the Constitution, give right issue of upholding the authorities, the judicial authorities, adhering to the judicial authorities. Any pronouncement from the Supreme Court stand as a law in this country, because it's binding binding by all agencies and even the courts. If you go to sub 2 of that same section, it talks about the Court of Appeal, and then sub 3 talk about the Federal High Court and State High Court. It goes like that. Now you see it goes by ranking. Now how do you on earth now, Federal High Court judge will now come and overrule the decisions pronounced by the Supreme Court in order to maybe suit your own personal interest? Or
as it stands today, is it even correct in the first instance to say the parties or the courts have obeyed the rule of law to whatever extent? Is that correct?
Yes. The issue now is this: the courts itself are the ones that first of all set the ball rolling. Because
in terms of flouting the rule of law.
The rule of law, yes, because he who seeks equity must do equity. And in as much as you want people to adhere to your rule and your orders, you ought to have to obey the ones ahead of you. Because even assuming the judge has not been in the picture, of which I know he ought to know, that about these 2 cases I mentioned, Supreme Court cases. He's a very respectable judge, I respect him. Assuming those things have not been in the picture, and later it was brought after the said order, the best he would have done was to decline jurisdiction over the matter based on those judgments. Because ever since, there was no anyone that got to that Supreme Court and with a pronouncement like that on the issue of Federal High Court. That should be around 80 something, 87 or thereabout. The Tukur versus Gongola State. So from that time to now, we do not have any pronouncement like that. Except now, or for this one now that it has started now. Probably. When it gets there, then we shall see if the courts would overrule itself, which I doubt is going to be possible.
Interesting. I want us to talk about, as it stands right now, the role of the law enforcement, because today we are very clear, given the news that we have, that you have heavy security presence at both palaces. Again, that is not going to resolve this issue. Apparently, what should be, in an ideal situation, the role of the security agencies in this matter?
Now, ideally, the security agency ought to have worked with the government, the state government. But because you did mention in your introduction the issue of politics, that's why they are now dancing left, right, and center. Because for them now, they don't know how to go about it. Because they have something to protect themselves with. If you ask them, why are you doing this? I'm doing this because there's a court order and the order was flaunted, therefore that's why we're doing to enforce the law. And they are right to some extent. Because for them, whatsoever that gets to them, that's what they work with. Because they cannot go and influence the judge, or they are not the judge that give the ruling that say this is what we want. So, and looking at it at the other perspective, in as much as the politics in it is involved, because like I said, they will have gone to the proper place to institute such action is at the State High Court. But I don't know why they opted to that, but probably it's based on the interests they have. And they wanted to use a separate court to just get something no matter what. And then that's where it is. The security agents have a role to play in the sense that if they do not answer to the authorities that be, because we all know in this country, even the governor is just a figurehead by saying that he's a chief security officer. In practice, it's not like that, because the order comes from Abuja. They will tell you, a commissioner will tell you that, I'm sorry, Mr. Governor, I cannot attend to you. I have an order from Abuja. And there's nothing you can do. And that is why we are always where we are, because this purported chief security officer cannot carry out the said functions that he ought to do. It's only when it comes to issue of mobilizing things to be done, buying some equipment to them, that's where they are now recognized as you have to put a hand in it. But when it comes to the practical control, total control of those security apparatus in that state, it's a difficult thing. If the government of the day are not in same page with the government in the federal level.
As of today, the Kano State government has issued an eviction notice to Emir Ado Bayero, because the government says it wants to renovate the palace immediately. How much does that interfere with any of these court judgments, and does that also resolve this issue or complicate it?
Like I said, the court ruling, the judge himself in the ruling made mention of two different things that is more or less confusing. Because on the one hand, he said, I am not setting aside, I have not set aside the laws passed by the State House of Assembly. And on the other side, that is the action taken by the governor that he's now trying to set aside. Now, the governor cannot on his own wake up one day and call his commissioners and say, let's appoint so person as Emir, and it will be done. It has to be a process. You know, this thing started as far back as 2019. The whole crisis. And the whole crisis started as 2019 when the former governor, Ganduje, now wake up one day and decided to make a law that will deplete the emirate into 5. As at then, they were at loggerheads with the then Sanusi. And be it as it may, he wanted to flex his muscle to show that he is supposed to be answerable to him, that is how it's supposed to be by the constitution. And he did what he did. That's where they now brought in this law that we're talking about, because it's a repeal. The main law was passed 2019, and then this one came up to repeal that law, to set it aside and deplete the emirate into 5. And this is a dynasty that has been operating for more than 1,000 years. And if you ask both the two emirs now, both the Sanusi and the Aminu, they will they will give you the history that goes to that 1,000 years, that they are belonging to that kingdom.
The same ancestry.
The same ancestry. And they belongs there. Now, going back to check the other ones, the other 5 that was created, the question is that, are they part of the ancestries that they ought to be kings in that place? The answer is no, to some extent. Because most of them, based on my understanding, I'm not from Kano, but I know a lot of things there, and based on my understanding, the whole things went wrong when those people were appointed. The then Kano,
and that's from our Governor Ganduje.
Yes, the then Kano citizens were not happy with it. But to some extent, they even wanted to go to court at that time. But the Sanusi himself said that he is not even willing to work with the Ganduje. It's better for him to just leave. And that was why he did not challenge it. And he left. Because there's no sense, because even if they went to court and they called the narrator, give judgment, well, yeah, come back, and then he now came back, it will still frustrate him.
One way or another.
One way or the other. So he left. Now, that is how it went all through. Now, this government of the day now, the AMPP government now, the NNPP government now, came now with this thing and felt that that error needs to be corrected. Because according to the reports, most of those, you know, there are king makers. They are the ones that appoint king.
Right.
They must come and vote. Okay, we wanted Mr. A to be the king. And then submit to the governor. That's the process. And the governor will announce. But this one, how they did it to get to where they are, and then creating those 5 emirates and giving them the same equal rights, because that's the other issue.
Yeah.
It gave them the same equal rights, just like the one is in main Kano town, the same thing for the one in maybe Karaye,
and the one in Bichi,
and other things. The same rights it gave them, and same everything. And before them, they were being run by what we call maybe district heads that are answerable to the main emirate, the main emirate. And everything goes like that. And come to think of it, this thing has been there for many years. Even the colonial masters, when they came and met the system. They did not abolish it. They allow it to go. In fact, they work hand in hand with the traditional office holders to get to where they want. And they were able to get their own, to now pass the information they came with and got what they wanted and left. The people that will have maybe said to be the one that will have done differently, who happens to be the military, also came and left it the way it is. Unfortunately for us, it's even the democratic system of government that's supposed to follow things in the proper way, follow the due process, to do things rightly. They are the ones now abusing that power, all in the name of politics. Is it not
a further complication, Barrister Usman, before we take a break now, that we are talking about the legal angle of this narrative, and you find people telling you, well, we see two hands in all of this. the hand of former Governor Kwankwaso and that of immediate past Governor Ganduje. How do we separate politics from the legal matters so we can deal squarely with the real issues of these developments?
Now, the issue now is this. Of course, most of us knew how all this thing ended. It was a master-servant kind of a relationship that ended up with issues, because the master that later promoted his political friend to get to his position in order for continuity, later now turned his back and became his arch enemy. And you know, these things happen already. We know that it happens. And most of the times when it happens like that, you know that something is wrong somewhere along the line. Because they used to say that you don't bite the finger that fed you.
That's right.
And whether you like it or not, there's a golden rule to that. Do what you want others to do to you. If you want respect, respect others. If you don't want respect, then disrespect others. Then you will get it. So it's like a golden rule catching up with most of them, per se. And no matter how you go about it, you can't escape it. But coming to look at it in the aspect of the law, as it were, because all of them have been established in the political space. That's why they are flexing the muscle that they are doing. The other one is in the right heart of the center, and then creating whatsoever he needs to create to get what he wants. While the other one was able to form a government in that state through his party.
With the governor being his loyalist?
Yes, being his loyalist. Now, being as is may, of course, there are things that the previous government did that they have to undo in order to put it back the way it were. That is their own business. But no, coming to look at what the law says, we should not carry politics and mix it up with in order to now try to use the law officers directly or indirectly in order to perpetuate or get to what you want. It doesn't help matters. And a constitutional nation that we are, that we observe and follow the rule of law. Ordinarily, things like that ought to have been factored and done amicably and based on the rule of law. Like it happened before, this thing, during the Goodluck administration, similar issue happened because there's nothing new in the face of the earth.
Right.
Something happened like that. Similar scenario, similar thing. That even at that point, the then Goodluck administration went ahead to even send a congratulatory message. Federal government sent congratulatory message to the Aminu Bayero then. And as at then, they were having issues with the former governor, the Kwankwaso. The president, they are having loggerheads with the governor. That issue of party thing, because they left the party, they now join another party in order to form this party now that has taken over the country, which they did. Now, in order for him to show his dominance in the state and to prove that this thing does not concern you, they went ahead to do the opposite. What the federal government was expecting was different, and what they did was different. Of course, it's not that they did something wrong, because all of them are entitled to become emirs. All of them, they're entitled. It's just he will do, and then the next person will do the next time. And they went and did. And remember, the then Sunusi was sacked by the Goodluck administration that time.
As CBN governor.
As CBN governor. Immediately when he was sacked, that was when the vacancy was created. The late Ado Bayero died. And then there was a vacancy. And then he felt, okay, let me go and contest. He went and did what he did, and he got it. And what did the federal government do at that time? When it happened like that, they backed out. To show that they are really, truly in obedience and adherence to the rule of law.
Incidentally, this is where we're going to take a quick break now, Barrister Usman. We're just going to continue this conversation shortly, everyone, just to further expand the narrative around the Kano Emirate Tussle for you here on Scale of Justice. We'll be back after this break. Do stay with us. We appreciate you staying with us, everyone. Let's talk quickly about, as it stands right now, I mean, you can't serve two masters, the good book says. But then you have two quote-unquote emirs in Kano. In the eye of the law, when it's all said and done, who is the emir of Kano as it stands right now?
As it stands now, based on the ruling of Justice Mohammed Liman of the Federal High Court Kano, like I did mention, he mentioned that he is not setting aside the law passed by the Kano State House of Assembly, but he's frowning at the disobedience of the court order that was issued in May. And even at that, according to the judgment, the ruling, he said that the defendants ought to be aware of the order.
Yeah.
That maybe they saw it in social media. And as it is, social media is not a proper way of service by law. There are steps to be taken before you can come back and say this is what you can do about that. I don't know whether that has been done. But be it as it may, you know, in law, it says, it's clear and it's right that you can't build a castle on nothing. No matter how beautiful a proceedings was conducted, how beautiful it is, in as much as it has no foundation, it goes to no issue. That is the position of the law. That is how it is. Now, if that is what the law says, and coming back to see that the judge himself now overruled 2 Supreme Court judgments that disallowed Federal High Court and prohibits, because you know only it prohibits Federal High Court strictly that issues of chieftaincy affairs are no-go area for you.
Right. Still clear.
It's clear based on those 2 judgments. And it has not been changed. But he went ahead and set it aside to give the judge the ruling he did. Coming to look at it now, for me, I would say that that judgment goes, that ruling goes to no issue. Based on the provision of the law and the position of the law that says you cannot build a castle on the air. Now, if the judgment will stand, it will stand on which foundation? In as much as the jurisdiction of the court lacked jurisdiction to entertain that such matter. Because it's clear in that judgment that the issue of enforcement of fundamental human rights can never emanate from chieftaincy affairs. It can never emanate from that. There's no way.
Because it's not a matter of right.
It's not a matter of right. And it is not stipulated in Chapter 4 of the Constitution that talks about the fundamental human rights of Nigerian citizens. So in as much as this is like that, and it's clear, it's not that maybe it's a Latin word or a maxim that somebody will say you need interpretation. It's clear that if that is the precedence and the principle to that, then of course you will come to the conclusion that yes, of course, whatsoever the judge must have said goes to no issue because the jurisdiction issue has not been treated. And the judge himself do not even attend or treat that matter very well in his ruling. So it goes that he did what he wants, but the law will always take its full course. And what is the law going to say? The law is going to work on what it has been established already. It cannot be changed today because somebody needs to be favored. No, it has to be like that because that's how it used to be before now. So for me, the judgment, yes, was conducted very well, but it goes to no issue as far as I'm concerned because the issue of jurisdiction is very paramount. In fact, in law, in practice, even at the point of judgment, you can raise that. You can raise that from the beginning of the proceeding before judgment, the issue of jurisdiction. You can raise that. And the court must listen to that and treat that because it affects the root of the matter. Once a party now come and say, my lord, this court lacks jurisdiction over this matter. Okay, why? You give your reasons and the court will look at it before it moves further. So like I said earlier on, I would have expected that even after giving the order, with the matter coming up for them to file their processes, best the judge will have done probably is to decline jurisdiction because it's a matter of power now. You cannot give what you don't have.
Right.
You must be empowered to do something before you give somebody. Now you are not empowered by the law to give ruling or judgment on this matter and you went and get and give to people. Are they receiving what is in their hand is just a mere piece of paper?
The Kano state government is apparently pushing ahead to ensure that the 15th Emir, Aminu Ado Bayero, is evicted from the mini palace, as it's called, if possible, from Kano State. The basis for that, as we now know, is that he wants to renovate. But would that not further complicate all of this? Because it doesn't look like Emir Aminu Ado Bayero is ready to move 1 inch just yet.
I know this whole thing is coming up because of the politics involved in the matter, just like you mentioned. Because ordinarily, like I mentioned earlier on, that this matter, similar issue, happened before.
Yes.
And the way it was resolved in a matured way. That is what is expected to be done. Not for somebody to be flexing muscle, I will not go, I will go. No. Because if you continue like that, it will get to a point of anarchy, lawlessness in that state. And the security agents will now be looking for how to even, because when it broke out, because this Kano as a state is a very, very wonderful state because it's one of the core states that in North is more or less like the center of, because just like Lagos is the center of commerce in that southwest, so is it in Kano. And a lot of things revolve around that Kano, even including neighboring countries that are around that axis. So there are multiple issues that are there that the government of the day, if they are not careful, they will lead this thing to another level of lawlessness that they cannot be curtailed. Because the best thing they would have done is that, of course, this matter I know is going to the Court of Appeal, and even at this, before then, the best thing that they will have done is for the former Emir, the Aminu Ado Bayero, should just take a bow and just live quietly and continue his own fight the way he wants it. In order, because it's not about a person. Because if you are talking about your own selfish interests at the detriment of the lives of innocent Nigerians, then you don't know what you're looking for. The same thing happened in this country when the former president, the then President Goodluck Jonathan, was not returned elected. And being the president, he has all the powers to do whatever he wants to do.
Based on incumbency.
Based on power of incumbency. But he said one thing that always caught my attention and my mind, and I respect him for that. That my ambition is not more than better than the lives of ordinary Nigerians. That is to say, he put his ambition behind the interests of Nigerians, common Nigerians.
I'd like to say a big thank you to you, Barrister Ziggy Usman, legal practitioner, for coming to share these very valuable insights with us in this regard. I mean, helping us to, as it were, to unbundle the complications in this development regarding the Kano Emirates Tussle. This is what we're leaving it, everyone, today. Thank you for watching. I'm Uyag Mofwebe. Shortly, we'll bring you, in the course of the week, another episode of Scale of Justice. Stay with Global Television.